Well, welcome to another episode of The Learning Journey. It's the podcast from the L&D department at MAF, and this week we are headed over to Madagascar to catch up with a man whose name is very difficult to pronounce. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Wayne. It's quite thrilling the way you introduced it.
Yeah.
Yes, this is Andry. Happy to be part of you in your podcast.
So can you give us your full name? Because I know there's, I think there's 4 names in your full name. Is that right?
Yes, that's it. Well, there's even more. What you see is only half of it. So this is Andry Rajaobelison, or in a very local way, we say this is Andry Rajaobelison. And additional names to that would be Hirilantu Jonah. But we are happy to stick with Andry or Andry Rajaobelison.
I'm very happy to stick with that as well, because there's no way I'm getting the other names pronounced. That is for sure. Hey, tell us, what is your role at MAF? What do you actually do there in Madagascar?
I've been acting as logistics manager for quite a few years now, since 2012, maybe, or 11. But since 2014, additional responsibility or roles I take is also a quality management system. So I'm a quality manager also of the operation side.
And how did you first get involved with MAF?
Oh, that was really a long story for old times. Back in 2006, well, 2 years before I really started with MAF, a friend of mine was calling me like, oh, I'd like you to be part or a guest of English communication course that my friend did at that time. So I joined. And then he was suggesting that there's a English speaking school that would be interested in me. So I just followed through. But in the end, it was my wife-to-be that was taken to that English-speaking school. And she still teaches there till today. I'm saying that because that's where the link with MAF started. One of the MAF international staff, one of the wives of the staff was a teacher or teaching at the school, and got to be friends with my wife-to-be, my girlfriend at that time. So my wife was telling me that there could be a job opportunity at MAF. So a few months later, I was called to come to MAF Madagascar, MAF vehicle workshop. And I had a quick chat or quick interview with the garage manager at that time. But apparently in the end, the garage manager was happy to take me, but the other guys decided I was not really the right person to work there because I did not have any car mechanic background, and he was right. A few months later, again, the same friend of my wife, whose husband was working at MAF, again informed us that MAF could have an opportunity for a job. So I came for an interview with the country director at that time was Jacob Adolf, bless him. He interviewed me. It was a very nice and quick chat we had. But since then, anyway, a quick decision from his side was made that I started working with MAF in April 2006 first as a flight follower. Those days, we used to have the HF radio to do the flight following. So it's like the pilot's calling Mike for Fox, this is Kilo Delta, and then I go on with the GPS coordinates and so on. Happy times those were. At the same time, I was also working. Part of my job is also to help the ground manager. He liked working with me as much as I liked working with him. So we got on well, preparing the aircraft in the morning, passengers and the bags all weighed up, loaded. Once the plane is ready to take off, I run upstairs again to the hangar for flight following. And that took me quite a few months. A lot of learning curve, because even talking on the HF radio with the pilot, it's not only about manipulating the press to talk, but it's about what does the pilot mean to tell me with these mumbling words and figures. But those are things like I had never been involved with aviation at all. And when I had traveled before and people at the airport is like checking my name and talking to someone over the phone and calling my name Alpha November Delta Romeo Yankee, at that time I never knew that meant Andry. So, I mean, I had nothing about aviation background at all, but from then on was the challenge, and I would say, audacious enough to jump in and take the plunge and learn whatever it takes, in the aim of satisfying my boss at that time, because getting a job was, as I told you, was not the first attempt, but getting a job is not easy. But I don't think it lasted even a year, working with the ground operation guys. And then the manager, who liked me so much, again gave me a nudge and said, "Hey, Andy, there's a job vacancy upstairs working with the logistics." But anyway, I think I should stop there for now, because your question was, how did I get involved with that's how it happened.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that story. But what I want to do, I want to rewind just a little bit, and I want to talk about that learning curve. You come in not from an aviation background, a little bit like me. I'm not from an aviation background. I've done a lot of flying, so I understand the check-in process, and I understand how to get a good seat on the plane and all that sort of thing, buckle my seatbelt and where my life jacket is. But the behind the scenes thing when it comes to aviation was not very familiar for me, and it sounds like for you as well. How did you push through that learning curve? Because there is a lot of aviation jargon, a lot of acronyms, and a lot of phrasing and things along those lines that is not very common, and it takes a lot to learn it.
That is true. When you look back to where you started, often you go like, how did I get here? But the thing is, from my experiences, learning is all about the conviction from yourself that this is going to be good and useful. And that is what fuels me to do and to take the courage to go through it. When you really get into learning and everything is new, there is that danger of, you are focused on little things when the big picture also needs to be there. And sometimes I have to sit back and say, hang on, what is the main picture? What's the main point? What are the new things? Because there's no point in learning the new things without knowing the purpose all behind it and so on. So knowing what this will bring to you always fuels you and encourages you to get through with it. To me personally, I've always been thinking since maybe when I was little, learning becomes knowing things, learning and knowing, and this is the thing that will never betray you. It will be something cannot be stolen from you in any situation. That's one feature that you can have. Learning is never a regret. You may think it's not useful today, but I have seen something I learned that had nothing to do with my job becomes useful to help me with my, thinking and analyzing things. So yeah, I think that's me. I have not regretted any learning, and I always trust that learning something new will make me a better person with more tools. So I think all these things kind of help me to say, okay, this is what fuels me.
Yeah, I have this saying that there's no waste in the kingdom of God, that everything that happens to us, or in this case, everything that we learn, that God is going to use that at some point in time. And sometimes that's here and now, but sometimes, as you've alluded to, it might not be for years down the track, but there's still a purpose in what we are learning.
Exactly. And many times when things I expected to happen disappointed me, I always believe it was not meant for me. God wants something different. I do not feel being a loser when something did not happen. Like I told you, I was first attempt was to a school and it didn't happen. I was happy. Well, my wife went there. Working to the workshop, well, feeling disappointed because you thought, well, you could do a good job of it, but no, there's something meant for me that will not be taken away, and no one can stop that when God meant it for you. So that is also something. I think there are ups and downs through our life experiences, but I always believe that something I do not know will lead me to something, because it is God's hand that takes us all through all along.
Hey, I wonder what you've learnt, not necessarily in terms of your position with MAF, but what have you learnt about yourself during the time that you've been with the organization? Because we can do the e-learning, we can do training, we can do hands-on learning, but I think a lot of the learning actually takes place internally in terms of maybe it's, understanding our strengths or something along those lines. So what has it been for you?
With learning through and working with math and all these learnings, I think going back to everything is new to me. What helped me a lot, and I feel much comfortable within math organization, is that there is always a guidance to something. You're not just going to be left alone with a problem to be solved or a question to be answered. From the very beginning, aviation work I see has got all these standards and procedures, and things that we do had already been written and planned ahead, and things we check has got a checklist and so on. So all these kind of tools provided through the courses or training, it helps me to, instead of, frowning at what is this something new, it opens my mind and say, okay.
I think very much being proactive, like you've just said, is so very important. You can sort of sit back and expect things to come to you, but when you're proactive and when you put your hand up and you say, look, I want to learn more, I want to do more, I want to know more, that people actually respond to that.
Indeed, learning is also from you. There are all the resources, but it is initiated from you. Because when I was in England for the first time, I met a Malagasy friend in England, and he asked me a question. Hey, Andy, where did you learn your English? And I went to this English school. It's like in pound, maybe less than a pound a course that I took. And that opened his eyes. And he went like, what? I spent thousands and thousands to this school, but you seem to speak better English than me. You haven't been to England for longer than me. And I say, then my conclusion was, yes, it's not only about where you are learning, it's about you. You need to be proactive, as you said. Have questions as much as you can and never give up. Find the answers. These kind of things.
Well, speaking about going to another place, a lot of us, including myself, haven't been to Madagascar. So, we might have seen pictures or video or something like that, but we've never actually been on the ground. So I wonder if you can sort of paint a picture for us in terms of the role that MAF is playing in Madagascar. Like, what difference is, your learning and others that are in the national staff, what difference is that making on the ground when it comes to the people of Madagascar?
When it comes to the people of Madagascar, our learnings help to ensure safety, help to ensure quality of our services, because we are here to serve people. And our learnings help us to do a good job to the satisfaction of our customers, for example, because the know-how is always required with these things to ensure that. Learning within math also is not about learning about knowledge and skills we have, but we also learned about the scriptures, learn to know more about God. And we have a weekly gathering of prayer, and we do have sharing from one another. And that also gives us or shapes us spiritually to carry on with our job. So it's not about knowing, having the skills only that we really acquire here, but we are also helping each other to have the right focus together. We do this not as if it is for these people, but to do it for the Lord. Now, the impact of that to the people also is that we always pray that when people see math planes or when people see us, we pray that they may see Jesus through our works. It indeed brings help to people. Let's say somebody fell off mango trees, broke his leg down to the area where there's no means of transport. They can only wait until maybe the person may die. And we, as math, either fly people for medical evacuation, or we also have flown doctors that kind of having a kind of a mobile hospital that they bring surgeries, they do operations and they do surgeries and so on.
Hey, just as we finish our chat today on the Learning Journey podcast, I wonder if you could speak a word of encouragement. Maybe there's somebody who's listening today and, I don't know, let's say they're in South Sudan or they're in Kenya or they're in Uganda. They're in a program somewhere, they're national staff, and they're really kind of struggling, with everything that they have to do and then putting learning on top of that. Can you kind of speak to them, just a word of encouragement?
Yeah, sure. I think I have a little insight to that. So my advice is that I know we have a pile of works on our plates, but knowing what we do or how we do the work really helps us to be effective and efficient with what we do. There's no point in forgetting about the training and just get on with the job. It'll be a frustration. I give an example. As logistics manager, we have logistics officers who goes out there, run around, going to the bank, dropping some letters to customers or doing shoppings and so on. And he has a list each day. And I say to him, it's about planning ahead. Learn first how you get to where you want to get to and how you should get there in an efficient way, and prioritize what should you do first to save time and trouble. And a few months later, this logistics officer came to me and said, hey, whenever I do not follow the instructions that you said, I always found myself frustrated by the end of the day. I labored and worked very hard with little gain. And I thought I was really working hard today. But in the end of the day, I went like, that's little I did. So my point is, the only way to get away from this frustration is not necessarily immediately dive into what you do. It's about look what you need to do and try to prioritize things. Even if it means the priority is to know how to do it, go and learn, go and ask, go and read before you get into it. Otherwise, you might still get the job done, but instead of having it done in 5 minutes, it might take you half an hour. So learning is really helping you to go smoothly with what you do. No matter how much work we have, the resources to help us is not only what should I read, but also knowing when you should ask others advice.
Go and learn, go and ask, go and read. I love that. I think that's a very great summary of what we're trying to encourage people to do in the Learning and Development podcast. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today and for allowing us to jump over into your office there in Madagascar. It's been great to chat with you, and we might touch base again in a couple of months' time. We might get you back on the podcast just for a bit of an update, but really appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Thank you so much, Wayne, for having me into your podcast. It's been a pleasure to share here.
Our guest on the podcast today was Andry from Madagascar. Yes, even now, I'm not going to attempt his last name. We do hope, though, you are inspired to continue your learning journey by hearing Andry's story and how he overcame the obstacles that were in front of him. Next episode, we chat with the CEO of MAF International, Dave Fyock, as he shares what he's learned in more than 30 years with the organisation. And if you haven't already, we'd love for you to subscribe to the podcast, and why not head over to the L&D SharePoint page to check out some of the learning resources available to help you reach your full potential.